So I just want to say, I said this before, and this is also gonna connect with the Ilhan Omar thing. And certainly I love what Monique just said about how we all treat each other. Like, from the most, short of like serious criminal activity, I am totally done with the idea that people cannot change, evolve, and so on in any number of areas. I think actually a big part of like cancel culture and so on is very neoliberal. I think that people do need to reread The Vampire Castle, and I think it does reflect our sort of constrained economic circumstances, a confusion of politics with sort of social mores in a way. There's a lot to unpack in it, but it's relevant here because I want to illustrate what I'm saying, which is that if Amy Klobuchar had this record of abusing her staff, which all of these stories are, and I don't think some of them that I've heard, frankly, have even come out yet, but everything that's on the public record. And I'll just start with the most maximum. I mean, first of all, you can't have your staff washing your dishes. You can't throw binders at people. You can't berate people, period. Case closed. There's nothing, period. And the notion and the idea that she called other workforces and told them not to rescind job offers is definitely, I mean, the first stuff is totally unacceptable, but you could potentially say like, it's not acceptable, but it's stuff you can bucket in work environment in a way. That's definitely a next level of like, oh, this is actually a really sick, twisted, like vindictive persona at work here. But that all being said, if Amy Klobuchar, and I've been taking this a lot in a lot of cases recently, even Northam to some extent, like if Amy Klobuchar several years ago said, I clearly need to be a much better person to work for and with, I'm going to undertake changes, and she talked about it. Even in her launch, she just said, "This is a truth. It's been addressed, and this is where I'm at now." Awesome. I wouldn't drag her for it for a second. No bullshit. Like I'm not into it. And then maybe I'll even cop to further. There is a partisan difference there. Maybe a Republican I wouldn't be so forgiving on. And even though she's clearly not my politics, there is some reality of the Democratic Party being the party functionally. Like if Amy Klobuchar somehow is the nominee, I'll certainly support her over Donald Trump. So if she came out and she said that, I would be done. But her response has been, no, I just have high expectations of my staff, just like I have high expectations of the country, which is sick, like twisted. And now, of course, it's on MSNBC with Christine Quinn and Stephanie Ruhle. And Christine Quinn is, I mean, Jesus Christ. I mean, this is somebody who can bind the oligarchic policies of Michael Bloomberg with the like profound lack of imagination of a Queen's Ward boss on TV. Not only saying that this, I mean, just playing the most crass, one-note, undermining identity politics. Because, of course,
if we wanted to parody it,
if you wanted to parody what people say when they rightly say that women candidates are held to a different standard, and there's no doubt that part of the rhetoric with Hillary Clinton as an example of why some people thought that she was so mean and so intense was absolutely because she was a woman. And in fact, contrary to both people who want to treat her as some type of cult deity figure and people who irrationally hate her, the big secret of a lot of Hillary Clinton was that she was actually a very standard-issued centrist Democratic candidate. And if she was a man, she would neither have the sort of pretend hype, and nor would she have this bizarre projection of people talking about her as some type of like unparalleled evil in the modern world. That is absolutely an example, and certainly the way people talk about Elizabeth Warren, who actually has serious substance. And has done some great things, and people dog her on bullshit constantly, is a good example of that. If you wanted to parody an undermining of an argument that could basically and again, I'm just being blunt. I like to sometimes think of not people in the quote unquote middle, but sometimes there are people just taking in arguments for the first time, who could go either way. And if this was their first introduction to how you're going to have a serious conversation about the double standards that women candidates face in sexism in the campaign trail, which is 100% real, get a load of this bullshit.
As it relates to Amy, I am so sick and tired of almost every time a woman steps forward to move up in position, whether it's political or in business or anywhere, she is all of a sudden the meanest, cruelest manager in the world. I'm sure Donald Trump is a peach to work for, because every time you turn around, he's told Twitter and the world you're about to get fired. Insert Hillary Clinton.
This is a really good point.
But I've worked in the Senate. I've talked to many other people who've worked in the Senate, for men and women, and they say that they're good bosses. When you have to be taken over and taken aside by the majority leader for throwing a binder at a staffer and hitting them, that's a problem.
Did Harry Reid confirm that he pulled her aside and had this conversation? I don't believe he did.
It's been confirmed by sources and in the report.
Harry Reid has not confirmed
and the whole reason these stories are coming out are because of ex-staffers of Amy Klobuchar saying it's a temperament issue.
Tell me examples.
And I would be saying this.
Show me example. Really? Show me example.
Absolutely.
You would not.
I would absolutely. If a man threw a binder at a staffer, I absolutely would.
Every time, almost every time, a woman steps forward, all of a sudden there are these unnamed sources, and Harry Reid is not confirmed.
For basically saying she was a bossy bitch.
Yeah.
I never heard that about Tulsi Gabbard. I never heard that about Elizabeth Warren. I didn't hear that about Kamala Harris or Kirsten Gillibrand. I didn't hear that about Hillary Clinton.
Oh, you did. People trashed Hillary as a boss.
No, they didn't.
That is a fact. That was part of the trash campaign against her.
No. This is such unbelievable dishonesty. Yes, some people trashed Hillary Clinton as a boss from a perspective of efficacy. And in fact, actually, and maybe you could argue this is sexist, there was things like she lets Mark Penn stick around and he's a fucking sleazy grifter and he's terrible at his job, but she can't hold him accountable. Those were things like that. Nobody.
They're too forgiving as bosses.
Literally was this spiel about the Clintons. There hasn't been a single story because they're being so fucking ludicrous, sympathetic Republican consultant in that segment says, there hasn't been a single story about Tulsi Gabbard, about Kirsten Gillibrand, about Kamala Harris as bosses. And the only things I would say actually about Hillary Clinton that you would hear through a rumor mill or even in reporting would actually be the stuff that would make you think, if you were a decent person, like, oh, okay, that speaks well of Hillary Clinton. She treats her people well. There was never any stories like that. And the idea that she's taking a truth, which is that anytime a woman puts herself forward in that leadership position, of course there's a different set of standards and sexism that they face, to reduce it to you should just be abusive is, I mean, it is the most rank, disingenuous abuse of a real thing that I've seen. All on top of the fact that Amy Klobuchar has not said, of course I work to be better at this. She's literally embracing, I am an asshole to people who work for me, as a launching point for her campaign. It's actually dystopian.
Yeah, and it's like, here's the thing is, if it was just, for example, like some of the reports that like Klobuchar is mean and she made staffers cry by like criticizing their work, right? That still is like worrying, but you know, if that was like the headline story, right, then maybe you could say that was sexism.
Yes,
and if we're talking about people who are having binders thrown at them, if we're talking about folks who are getting other jobs and then she's calling their new employers to undermine that new position for them, I mean, that's serious abuse.
But David, to be fair, if Chuck Schumer did that, you would be the first one to say that that was him being strategic.
Holy shit, I definitely would not. I would love to have dirt like that on Chuck Schumer.
Yeah, no, right. I was going to say, no kidding. The big thing about this story was like, why couldn't this become from an office more politically useful than somebody who's going to poll 2% nationally?
Is running for vice president.
Right. That's running for vice president or like ag secretary or AG.
You know, and it's very frustrating.
I just want to say really briefly, I mean, John Bolton got blocked from being UN ambassador under George W. Bush because there was uniform Democratic opposition because of how extreme he was on things like invading Iraq and the UN. But there was one Republican that flipped in his confirmation hearing to vote against him. And his primary reason was accounts of staff abuse. And he couldn't, I remember watching the hearings, he just was like, I can't treat people's staff for you like that, dude. Sorry.
You know, the structural point is that we need to massively increase the budgets for staff for Congress.
100%.
Which is something that I think hasn't been done in a massive way since like LBJ or someone like that. Like that's
Exactly.
like, this is way outdated. We need a lot more money to be able to react to the modern world, basically.
As somebody who lived in DC for a long time, I can attest that people are can be very underpaid as staffers.
Yes, and good paying jobs, not just for rich kids who want to get like a resume.
It's like, oh, you want to do an internship? So everybody in that's Stephanie Rule, Christine Quinn, and Amy Klobuchar to the motherfucking gulag. You just enjoyed that Michael Brooks Show video, and you can get a lot more by subscribing to us here at the Michael Brooks Show YouTube channel. It's literally right there.